What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and this is a video I'm super excited about because I'm hoping I get a lot of input from you all in the comments down below, because I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to this. None of us have a crystal ball, but I certainly think this is a topic that is worthy of discussion. So as you may or may not know, I have been investing in cards for a long time, like 20 years, and not just dabbling, like heavily investing. I've got a sports card collection that you can literally buy a house with. But a couple years ago, my daughter came to me and she said, "Hey Dad, I want to do with Pokemon cards what you do with sports cards." And then of course it was game over. I was all in. I started doing the research, and the more and more research I did, the more and more bullish I became on the long-term prospects of the TCG space, and just the fact that I think Pokemon in specific in the TCG space has an opportunity to really outperform sports cards in the long run. I think sports cards is doing great. I think they're going to continue to do well, but I think TCG has the opportunity to really outperform, and we're at a really exciting time to get in right now. With that being said, hopefully, like all of you, before I get into any investment or before I start deciding where I'm going to spend my money, I do a ton of research, and I really like to spend most of my time talking about what the downside is, like what risk is there, because face it, any dollars that you or I or any of us spend in the Pokemon space right now that we're not spending for fun. There's obviously fun things we do in the hobby, like ripping boxes and enjoying these things with our kids or ourselves or our loved ones or whatever, but for true investment dollars, you have options. You can put it into Pokemon, you could put it into real estate, you could put it into the stock market, right? So whenever I'm making true investment decisions, like true dollars where I have to decide where I'm going to put it for long-term price appreciation, I always like to think about, hey, like what are the downsides? What are the risks to this? What would keep this from being a great investment over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Now, when I first started in the Pokemon space, one of the biggest concerns that I had was the lack of newness. Now, I know there's new Pokemon coming out, and I know there's new sets coming out, and I know that, there's shiny Pokemon, there's Black Star promos, right? There's rainbows, like there's full arts, they're always, Pokemon companies always keeping it quote unquote fresh. But my biggest concern was the big name Pokemon, the big chase Pokemon have been the same since 1999, right? Like obviously you got Charizard on here. Charizard's the big one. You've got Pikachu, you got Squirtle, you got Bulbasaur, you got Venusaur, you got, Zapdos, you've got all of it seems like it's the same names all the time. And my biggest concern, well, not my biggest concern, but one of my biggest concerns was over the next 20 years, which is my timeline for this investing journey in the Pokemon spaces. Over the next 20 years, can Pokemon remain relevant? Can it still attract new collectors and new investors if it doesn't find a way to get some big name Pokemon out there that can contend with Pikachu, that can contend with Charizard, that can get up there against all these 151 Kanto Pokemon, right, from Gen 1. Like, it is hard for me to imagine these cards being able to maintain their value if there's nothing new in the future. Now, they sure have stood the test of time thus far, right? Like, no matter how many Charizards they come out, Charizard still remains the big chase card. My family, we love Pikachu. You see behind me, I got tons of Pikachu slabs and boxes and things like that in the background. So I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm not saying that I don't think they will do it. As I said earlier, I have 2 feet firmly planted in the Pokemon investing space. So obviously I believe that either they can, or that the Pokemon company will find a way to inject some new freshness into this to keep new future people invested, and to hopefully keep old people invested, right? Because we want to make sure that people who have been in the hobby stay in the hobby while we're attracting new people, because as Pokemon continues to print more cards, which they will do, and as the hobby continues to grow, like, we need new and old to stay in alike. So with that being said, I thought I was going to do this video based off of just Charizard itself and just say, hey, what have I learned about Charizard cards and Charizard investing and the overall quote unquote freshness or newness here in the Pokemon hobby. Now, I'm going to start off with a slide right here that I think is really cool and I think is really relevant. You all know we do a ton of data dives on this channel. One of my favorite videos every single month is when we look at the TCG grading card video, right? We look at the overall grading volume for PSA, SGC, CGC, and Beckett. And one of the subcomponents of that video is the most graded characters, right? We talk about the most graded Pokemon every single month. And then when I'm leveraging my other investment dollars, I like to invest either in boxes or sets that feature the most graded Pokemon, simply because that's the market telling me that, hey, these are the most popular Pokemon, so I want the sets that contain them or the boxes that have them on the cover, and those over time have traditionally done really, really well. But in this slide right here, we're looking at baseball, basketball, and football, and TCG, and I'm doing that for a purpose, and I'm going to walk you through it right now. So the slides on the left right there, you see December 2022, November 23. Those are the 12 most graded sports players, right? You see Michael Jordan up there, Julio Rodriguez, Kobe Bryant, right? You see them from the December 2022 to November of 2023. Then in the middle there, you see the Pokemon from December 2022 to November 2023. What was interesting to me, when you look at the December versus November for sports, you see that there's some repetition, but there's also some newness, right? Like there's 8 new names on there, and there's 8 names that are duplicated. Now, some of the duplicated names are the biggest ones of all time. You got Michael Jordan on there, right? You got Kobe Bryant on there. You got LeBron James on there. You got Ken Griffey Jr. on there, right? Like you got some of the biggest names out there in sports, and you got this little guy named Shohei Ohtani who just signed the world record contract for the biggest one in North American sports ever. Just signed a 10-year, $700 million contract with the Dodgers, which is absolutely crazy, right? So you've got some new and you've got some old on there, which I think is good. Remember, I'm trying to draw a correlation between the sports hobby and the TCG space as well. But then when you look at the December 2022 to November of 23 for the TCG space there in the middle, look at the top 7 names. They are exactly the same. You got Pikachu, you got Charizard, you got Mew, you got Umbreon, you got Blastoise, you got Venusaur, you got Zapdos, and you have them literally almost in the exact same order from top to bottom. The only thing that's flipped is Charizard and Pikachu over the last year have flipped, but outside of that, they are exactly the same. Now, when you get down below that, look at that. You see some Yu-Gi-Oh cards in there. You got Rayquaza, you got Charmander, which is on there twice, Moltres, Celebi, you got Arceus, you got Lily, you got Marnie. So you have a little bit of rotation down there at the bottom, but it's nothing like in the sports card space. Like, think about this. Every single year in the sports card space, there is a new rookie class, right? There's a new group of players who are going from college to the pros. So that happens in basketball, baseball, football, and a lot of people in that hobby, in the sports card hobby, I only collect rookie cards of Hall of Famers, right? So a lot of people in those hobbies, whenever the new cards come out of the new players, maybe they come from your favorite college, or maybe they're collegiate players who you think are going to have a great professional career. Like, people pile in on them right now. So every single year there is newness in all of the sports. It just happens, right? Players retire, and once players retire, guess what? There's additional interest in their cards because, hey, they're retired, especially if they're all-time great players or they're on your all-time favorite teams. Like, there's just so much to keep people involved in the sports space. And then we look at the TCG space, and it is literally exactly the same. Like, yes, there's new quote-unquote rookies, right? There's new Pokemon that come out, right? There's new variants of the old Pokemon that come out. But my concern is the same names all at the top. Is that going to be enough to propel us into this long-term just bull market that we need to see? There's always going to be fluctuations. There will be ups and downs. But when I think about this too, like, we see Michael Jordan on the far right over there. Those are the list of the most graded cards and subjects from 2021 in December. So now we're going back a couple years. Look at the names at the top: Charizard, Pikachu, Michael Jordan, LeBron James. Now, when I think about that, going back all the way to 2021, like, yeah, guess what? The top 2 are the same top 2 in the TCG space, but guess what? Michael Jordan and LeBron James are all-time greats there. So can the Charizard and Pikachu combination be, say, the Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Charizard's Michael Jordan, maybe Pikachu's Tom Brady? Like, who knows? So I don't know if there is going to be enough collector interest in the long run for all of this to make sense. I feel like there is. We see it in the sports card space. Remember, the reason I look at the sports card space too is because the sports card space has been around since the early 1900s, right? Like, there's cards in the sports card space from the 1880s, 1890s. And what I want is I want TCG to have this long and robust career, just like the sports card space has. So for me, it's really interesting. Now, there's also some cautionary tales to the sports card space. You see a couple names over there on the right. You see Ja Morant, you see Zion Williams. Like, Zion Williams is still doing well, but he sure fell short of expectations. Ja Morant is a great player, but he can't seem to keep guns out of his hands. So his cards, people invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in his cards, and they've come down. You see Justin Herbert over there, right? Like, everybody thought he was the next great quarterback. We talked about people piling in on rookie cards. People piled in on his, and now he's average at best. So anyways, there's a lot of safety in having a known top commodity like Charizard and Pikachu. There's a lot of risk in investing in early sports cards of players who, aren't proven at the professional level yet. So there's this risk versus reward balance in the two different spaces. And For me, I feel like the Charizard can actually be like the Michael Jordan. I think it already is the Michael Jordan of the TCG space, right? I think Pikachu can be up there as well. I do think that there's some risk to the hobby if we can't find those quote-unquote hot young rookies to come out or people to drive new people in, and most importantly, not only to drive them in, but to keep them in for times and times and time to come, right? Because we need people involved for years. But I thought this was a really interesting comparison of sports cards and TCG cards, okay? So now I also thought it'd be interesting to look at the rate that Charizard cards have been printed. So this is a list of all of the eras that have Charizard cards. And I say that because when I tried to find something from Heart Gold, Soul Silver, maybe they exist, but I certainly couldn't find a Charizard card from there. But when you look, I have the jumbos and the promos at the bottom, but then when you start with the WotC era, right? You had 22 cards in the WotC era. Now remember, that encompasses a large number of years and a large number of sets. But then when you get to Pokemon EX, Diamond and Pearl, Platinum, Black and White, like the number of Charizard cards shrinks completely. Now I know that wasn't the best era for Pokemon in general. Popularity wasn't that high. You know, that's why those cards and sets are worth so much now, because they weren't super popular. It's hard to get them in high grade. Certainly hard to find any of them sealed. But then you see, as we started to transition into the XY era, things start to get a little frothy from the Charizard perspective, right? 19 in XY, 16 in Sun and Moon, 21 in Sword and Shield, and we already have 7 in the Scarlet and Violet era. Now, we're going to look specifically at the beginning of Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet here in just a minute, but here's what I want to say. Pokemon Company, like, they love you as a collector. They really do. They love you as a collector. They want you to love their sets. They want you to love their products because they want you to buy it. They don't love you as an investor. They don't particularly care if your Charizard card or any of your sealed products goes from $10 to $20 or from $150 to $300. And they literally could care less. All they care about is providing a quality product to you and me in order for us to go out there and spend our hard-earned money on it so that they can grow the brand and so that they can make more money. Like, that's how businesses work. They care deeply about you. They care deeply about you loving the product, but they could care less about the investability of it. They just care about the collectability of it. And I think that's why we're starting to see more and more Charizards flooding the market here in the last couple years, because if you got lightning in a bottle, why wouldn't you use it, right? Like, it's just silly not to. So of course they're going to go ahead and print more Charizards, knowing that everybody's going to be up there collecting it and buying it, just like I am. Like, when you look at my Poké closet, almost all of my boxes have either Pikachu or Charizard in it, or again, one of the other original 151 Pokemon, just because I feel like in the next 20 years, those are the ones that are going to hold the most value. So I thought it was really interesting to kind of see the way Charizard has started to grow, and we see more and more of them every single year. And we don't even know what Scarlet and Violet is going to bring. But what I did want to say was this. I promised you we were going to look at the beginning of the Sword and Shield era, and these are the Charizard cards that I could find. Now, again, I'm not perfect. I do a ton of research, but of course I miss things from time to time. But I found the ones from Champion's Path, the ones from Vivid Voltage, and the ones from Darkness Ablaze. And ignore the prices down below, especially on the Charizard pre-release. You can get that Charizard pre-release from Vivid Voltage for like $45 online. If you want it sealed, you can get it still sealed for like 70 bucks on eBay. So really cool card. But when I look at these right here, we all know the Darkness Ablaze Charizard, like, that was just not a good card at all, right? There's like 15,000 in PSA 10 out there. The art is okay. I don't think it's overly impressive. And the Vivid Voltage cards, like, I don't particularly think those are anything special at all, you know? And then when you look at the Champion's Path, you get some love in Champion's Path, right? Champion's Path, I think that rainbow card is really cool. And then the V-Secret is really cool. And the price reflects it, right? Like, each of those are over $170. But again, remember, like, this was a different era of Pokemon collecting, because we're going to look at the Scarlet and Violet ones here in just a second. You have to remember, like, Champion's Path print demand or print quality and print number was way different, I guarantee you, than say Pokemon 151 or say, you know, any of the other more recent sets that are going to come out. So take that with a grain of salt. And when I look at these cards don't get me incredibly excited, but what did get me excited was, look at these. Now, say what you want about the Terra Charizards here from the Scarlet and Violet era. Personally, not a huge fan of them, okay? I will come out, I will say it. For whatever reason, they just don't trip my trigger. But I know that they do trip a lot of people's triggers. A lot of people think that they're cool. So we have seven cards that have already come out just in the regular series. Then we have the Black Star promo in that premium collection box. Remember I said if you look in my Poké closet, you're going to see a whole bunch of sealed product that has Charizard in it. Guess what? I've got, like, I don't know, not a ton, but I'm slowly building them. I think I have 6 of these right now. And I won't build to a huge number because I think they're in high supply, and I don't think that they're going to be super rare. But again, I'm thinking about what's going to give me great long-term price appreciation appreciation. I'm not going to dump a ton of money into this because I don't think it's going to pop super soon, but I'm going to make sure that I have enough in the Poke Closet, and there's been some incredible deals on this moving forward. But when you look at the artwork on this slide compared to the artwork from the previous one, this is what gets me excited is, okay, listen, Pokemon Company said, hey, listen, maybe our first couple Charizards that came out in the Sword and Shield era weren't that great, not a lot of fanfare. We need to step our game up, and I certainly think that they have. These cards, even if the Terra design isn't for you, even if the gold card's not for you, I think all of us can at least agree that these show more excitement, these show more effort, like these show at least some really cool artwork for the beginning of Scarlet and Violet. So when I'm thinking about the long-term ability for Charizard to kind of hold the throne, you know, be the top dog, as long as the Pokemon Company continues to show this type of effort is, hey, listen, Charizard is always going to be the big name. Charizard's our Michael Jordan, but we're not just going to blandly drop them into regular sets. Like, we're going to go ahead and give them some EXs, some Vs, you know, some alt arts, keep it fresh, keep it exciting. This is what makes me think that Charizard can absolutely have the wherewithal, you know, to really stand the test of time in the long run. So I think that even though we see a lot of Charizard cards, I've heard a lot of people talking about kind of Charizard fatigue, but I will say this, at least Pokemon Company is trying to make it fresh, trying to make it cool, and I think that these artworks are a good step in the right direction. So the other thing I wanted to call out is this, Charizard is seeing a lot of softness in the market overall, but this is something from that investment video that I do when I do our Pokemon index funds. Remember, like, one of the index funds on that video is the Charizard Ultimate Index, and I updated the Charizard one specifically just for this video because as I was going through this, I thought, you know, some of the newer Charizard cards are showing some softness, but let me see how some of these big cards are doing, like the legacy cards, the big chase ones with the fire lizard on it. So these are the prices from 5/22 when I started the index fund, and I updated these for 12/9, and you'll see that it's kind of a mixed bag. More are down than up, and overall it's down 5%. But when you think about how a lot of the big Charizard cards from the recent eras have been dropping like a rock, like a lot of them, think about that alt art from Brilliant Stars, you know, and a lot of the ones from Sun and Moon right now are under a ton of pressure. A lot of Sun and Moon cards are under a ton of pressure. So the fact that this is only down 5%, you know, really over the last 6.5 months, you know, does show that Charizard's still the big dog. But guess what? It does feel the same pressure as the macro Pokemon market. Like, it's not all of his cards will have the ability to go ahead and push through when everything is down. Charizard's not immune to the overall effects of the hobby as a whole. So I thought this would be really cool to call out. I thought it was interesting to see how some of these cards are moving. I always keep a real close eye on that Charizard first edition holo from the base set. I think that is a card, obviously, like that's kind of like the North Star here in the hobby. So as I see that go up and down over time, that's something to keep an eye on. If that gets down in this PSA 9 below the 10K mark, that'll be really interesting. But so far it's been holding in the $13,000 to $15,000 range. So again, holding up really well. So this is my take on Charizard. I think that Charizard has it. I think Charizard can be the Michael Jordan. I'm not concerned about Charizard holding the space. I think Pikachu can absolutely be the number 2 player in this, but I do want to see some ways to continue to keep the market fresh, to continue to keep new Pokemon in here. We need to attract all kinds of new collectors, and overall, I think it's going to be a ton of fun to watch this evolve. If any company over the last 20-something years has proven the ability to continue to adapt with times, to continue to evolve their product, and just find ways to continue to survive no matter what's thrown at them, it is the Pokemon Company. I am happy to be invested in Pokemon. I will continue to be invested in Pokemon, and I hope you guys have an absolute epic one. I appreciate y'all. Talk to you later. See you, everybody.